Welcome to the Property Management Mastermind Show with your host, Brad Larson. Brad owns one of the fastest growing property management companies in San Antonio, Texas. This podcast is for property managers by property managers. You'll hear from industry-leading professionals on best practices, new ideas, success stories, and lessons learned. This is your opportunity to learn about the latest industry buzz surrounding property management, as well as tips and strategies to improve your business. Now here's your host, Brad Larson.
In today's show, we have a distinguished guest here in studio named Deniz Yusuf. Now, Deniz is a business development coach from Australia who focuses on training property managers on how to attract and sign up new business. You can check him out on his website at bdmcoach.com.au. Let's have a listen. How are you doing today, Deniz?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Brad. I really appreciate you having me here on board.
Great. Glad you could make it. So Deniz is an esteemed guest of ours, and he is a business development coach. And I've been a disciple of his for years. Once I discovered him, bought several of his stuff and listened to everything I can, and really believe that he has the background and knowledge to do what he is doing. I'm happy to have him here. So Deniz, let's talk about kind of your background and what you do as a business development coach.
Yeah, so my background is actually selling fruit and vegetables. So from a young age, my parents had distilled in me, it was all about customer service and client satisfaction. From selling fruit and vegetables, I did that for my dad for a while, took over his business when he passed away. Then I fell into real estate. With no preconceived ideas about real estate, I ended up in real estate. So I was a leasing consultant. Mm-hmm. So my specialised job was just to, fill those properties for those owners, those vacant properties. Did a little bit of maintenance, chased some arrears at the same time. After a couple of months of doing that, I then was honoured, should we say, to then, be the hunting person to get new managements as the business development manager, because the prime job of a business development manager is to hunt and collect business. Yep. So not rely on those phone calls to come in, but to go out and hunt for them. And I just loved that competitive spirit of beating the other agents to win the business. So I did that for 4 years.
And you had an esteemed 4 years, if I recall. Tell me about the numbers on that.
Yeah, I did. So my first year I listed 67 doors, as you guys call it in the USA. We call it, managements. So I listed 67 because I didn't know how to sell the services of the office. I would shake when somebody asked me for a discount. I didn't know what to do because I didn't know how to, sell our services. I then listed 191 doors in my second year, 237 in my third year. In my final year, I listed 317 doors.
And you thought you were on pace for more in the last year.
Yeah, I was well and truly, I'd listed 117 doors in 3 months. So I was looking at 400 plus. I'd worked out, and that was in not the busy season, how I'd done that as well.
Yeah.
So
and hearing that story, I thought, at some point you're going to reach tracer burnout, as they call it, to where you're going to get to the point where I can only go on so many appointments every day and only work so many leads because I'm only one person.
It's exactly what happened, Brad. Mm-hmm. I was walking into a door and, any ejection that would come my way, I knew the answer. I knew what we were doing, what we had in place, what was, how to overcome that. Even before they were bringing it up, I was, I'd done over 1,000 presentations, 1,077 presentations in 4 years.
That's a lot.
So, if anyone's going to do that many presentations, they're going to get a rhythm. That you are going to get a rhythm. So, and I was doing it on myself. The only assistant that I did have is I did have someone, they would put my packs together for me. I'd still do my own CMAs, comparable market analysis, but it was the putting those packs together and, filtering a few calls for me as well if it was somebody that I'd signed up, etc. But 6-7 presentations a day at times. And
that's killer.
Yeah, it was. The burnout came. And what's interesting as well is because I'd done it for 3 years and I had a really good rhythm, my last year I actually worked less hours a week. I stopped doing presentations after 5:30.
Okay.
I would turn up to work at 8:30 in the morning. drop the kids to school. I'd be at work at 8:30 in the morning. And if an owner said, can you come on a weekend? Can you do this? I only can come on a Sunday. I would say, look, guys, I've got a family just like you guys. I've got 3 beautiful daughters, and unfortunately I can't. But I can come and meet your partner, whether it was a wife or a husband. I can meet one of you. I'll go through everything, and I'll be sure to answer it for you. And I actually enjoyed meeting one person better than the both of them, because they couldn't work together to counter anything that I had to say. I could sit there, and I would go through the managing agency agreement, as you call it here. I used to call it an authorization form. It was a softer approach. So if I was with you, Brad, if you were, you had your wife at she was at work, I would sit down, I'd go through everything with you, I'd go through the authorization form, and I'd get you to fill out the form where it's correct. Look, your wife's going to come home and she's going to be asking you questions. Let's just fill it out now. And right at the end, all we have to do is get her to sign right here. And she would actually sign it. No problem. I'll get my husband to sign when he comes home, or you'll get your wife to home. And I'd turn up to work the next day and there was an authorization form sitting on my desk waiting for me.
That's great.
Awesome. It was good.
Stuff.
Yeah, it was really good. But it's about gaining their trust as well.
We have a lot of the same problems that you're going to see throughout small single-family home property management companies. Is when we started, I was doing everything. Mm-hmm. I was the principal, I was the broker, I was the business development manager, I was the operations guy. And you see that it's very common. You see this all the time.
Yeah, you do.
And somebody asked me one time, what was the trigger point to say, okay, enough's enough, you have to go hire a business development person. And it was about 100 homes for me. We hit about 100 to 120, and that was the point where, okay, I can no longer go on 2 or 3 appointments a day, or even 2 to 3 appointments a week, and still run the business of management and leasing and all that stuff. And I started to seek out knowledge from you and several other key players from the Australian community, and found out that this was a good time. Now is the time to hire a business development manager. I just wish I had compensated that person correctly.
Yeah.
So that was one thing you and I've talked about is, that was a misfire, let's say, as when that initial first hire came about. I think I handled that incorrectly. And so I hate to air the dirty laundry like that sometimes, but it's a lesson learned. I hope somebody else out there listening will say, maybe I shouldn't do that. And I don't need to go into details too much, but essentially there's a right way to compensate a business development person, and then there's an overly strong way.
Yeah.
And one of the things we also chatted on was, where are those leads coming from?
Look, it's one of the things that you do need to think about when you are hiring a BDM. I don't know the full story of what happened for yourself, but a business shouldn't be paying a BDM the same income or bonus for leads that are generated by the office, but if the BDM's gone out and hunted and collected and sourced the door themselves, then they deserve a higher bonus.
Agreed.
That's how I look at it. And the more you list, then obviously the higher income that you can get paid.
Yeah. So if you had grabbed me at 100 homes and said, Brad, do it this way, what would you recommend?
Are you talking about what I'd recommend for a bonus structure?
Yeah, like a compensation structure for a business development person, because a lot of folks out there might be in the same position where they're starting to grow. Sometimes people go to 200 to 250 homes because they're mom and pop, meaning a husband and wife team, or they have some other resources in place where they have things fall in their lap. But at some point, if you're interested in growth, you just have to hire a sales staff to do the business development side, because one of the things that we learned this year, and we were talking about a hot market in 2016, is we lost probably 20% of our inventory, and because everything was selling in this region, this market. I mean, the dogs were selling.
Yeah.
So we had to replace all that. And if you're just sitting on your laurels, you're going backwards unless you're actually making a very hard effort and getting more homes signed up.
Yeah, so a question I've got for you, that 20%, how many of those were actually signed up in 2016?
Very few. They were all signed up in 13, 14, 15, on before that. And there were some reluctant landlords in there, and they saw the hot market, and they're like, yeah, we want to sell, we want to dump.
So they're owners that probably wanted to sell earlier, but they realised if they sold 2013, 14, 15, they were going to lose money. 2016, there's a high. Okay, and fair enough. The reason why I was asking that question is because one of the mistakes that a lot of offices make is they pay a BDM an income for generating business in, and 3 months later the property sells. So to me, one of the things I'd be looking at is, pay the bonus, pay a particular bonus up front, but you need to relook at it as long as you've still got it after 6 months. So, a big tip is don't just pay a bonus for a particular property. Pay it on the annual income it's generating, that it's bringing in. Anyone can come in and list 50 properties in a year or 100 properties in a year, but it's going to be at 2%, and you're meant to be at 8%, right? So you want to be paying them on the annual income. So I'd be giving them a minimum annual income they can come with, because you want to give them a little bit of leeway for any negotiating. Okay. Whether it's a multiple owner or, sometimes you've got you might have 4 or 5 owners for a property, and they're sometimes the hardest to negotiate on. Or it could be a higher income that's coming in for the property, a higher rent. So if you've got a property that's $4,000 a month versus a property that's $2,000 a month, you're going to be okay to leeway a little bit on the fees.
Right.
Okay, so, you got to look at those things as well.
So we've transitioned into a business development staff now where it's an inside and outside approach. So we have 2 hires, and one is working the inside stuff like the marketing, the websites, the lead generation, and the other is going to be the outside person where they go out in the field and they meet with the owners in person. And that seems to be working out very well. Now, to steal some thunder from our dear friend of yours, Andrew Reese, we talked about this as well, where we have a portfolio manager model hybrid to where it's a single owner point of contact.
Yep.
And the owners have direct access to those portfolio managers that work for us. And as Andrew would say, the water would find its own level, because the BDM wants to go out and sign up anything, right? Anything to get that little tidbit bonus. But if a portfolio manager won't take it on, then you're not going to take that into your inventory. So it's a genius thing that Andrew came up with, and we've stolen quite a bit of it. To give him credit on it, and it's been working out great for us for the last 18 months.
Look, we ran the same system after going to the same the training, the CD audio that you listen to, and when you've spoken to Andrew, I actually was at that conference. And we transitioned our office to do the same thing. So I was the BDM, and I had 11 property managers, females, and they would have my throat if I listed a property, that they weren't comfortable or feeling safe to go into, especially at 5 o'clock in the afternoon for a routine or whatever the case, which was fair enough. So we did set them, and look, I've got 3 daughters. One day they're going to maybe have to rent a property themselves, and I used to take on the concept of I wouldn't list a property if I wouldn't move into it myself or my daughters. Something
we talked about just briefly a little bit earlier. I want you to expand on the business health check you mentioned for the marketing side. So if we're speaking specifically on business development, and you mentioned doing a health check, I'm really curious about that. I'm sure a lot of people out there are as well, to kind of what that would entail with your services coming in and looking at it.
Yeah, surprisingly, you might have an office that's been open for 10 or 15 years or even longer in some cases, and you've had 5 or 6 different property managers that have come in, or general managers, or however your office is set up. And the first person that set up the very first property management brochure, they've written it from their heart, and they've written it from the policies and procedures that the office was doing at that time. And then over the time, 2 or 3 different property managers are coming into an office, and they might go, I like that sentence. Oh, that sentence is good too. I like that photo. And then all of a sudden you've got a bitzer of a property management brochure. So the reason why I do a health check on what their marketing is A, I want to know, are they actually asking for the business? B, are they selling their points of differences? And C, would I give them my management? Are they looking professional? And, as it's not one piece of marketing. You've got various types of marketing. And does the property management brochure reflect what the Facebook page, the LinkedIn account, and what your website does? And is it also reflecting on what are the sales teams doing as well? So I've got to look for that common thread in it, and I've got to make sure that it's the same font.
I'm assuming you go through this whole
I go through the whole process
of the whole life cycle of marketing, and then you make written recommendations to that particular company.
Yeah, I do it face to face with you. I go through this. I've got questions. It's about 90 questions that they have to answer.
Okay, that's a lot.
Yeah, it's and they get cranky at me, and I apologise as I'm giving it to them or I'm emailing it to them, and then it takes about 3 to 4 hours for us to go through together. After they've already done it, I make them sit with me, and I'll do it face to face with them as well.
What are some of your success stories on that?
Some of the success stories are, Dennis, give us a month. Please don't come visit us next week. You've just highlighted things that we didn't know we weren't doing, or, wow, we used to do this 6 years ago and we've stopped and now we're not. One of the examples is letterbox drops, which you can't do here in the United States.
But we can do door hangers.
You can
Pretty
do door
similar.
hangers.
Yeah.
Yeah. So door hangers is something you can do. So letterbox drops is something that works really well in Australia. In some of the cities it doesn't because of the high rises, etc. But it works really well, especially in the country towns, small communities, metropolitan.
That's one of the things I think we want to implement here is, we're talking about an outside guy, and I've always heard something called the 10-10 rule.
Yeah, so that's 10 properties either side and maybe
Correct. 20
across the road. Yep.
Right. So you have, same thing. It's like 10 across the street and the 5 to your left and right. So that's 10-10. But it's the same concept. I mean, if you're there already out in the field, just take 20 minutes and go to the 5 to the left, 5 to the right, 10 across the street, put door hangers out, knock on doors, and just say, hey, we're getting ready to list that home at 123 Maple. Here's who we are. Call us if you need anything. Love you, goodbye.
Yeah, have a call to action on it. And if you're paying someone to go put your for lease signs out the front, everyone should have a for lease sign out the front.
Agreed, because it gives you an excuse to go knock on doors.
Yep, absolutely. Look, we've just listed 52 ABC Street. Do you know anyone looking to move, or would you like an updated rental opinion on your investment property? There's always that one person, Brad, that's in the garden. There's always that one person in the street that knows everything that's going on in the street. You go introduce yourself. If you're a new agent, you introduce yourself as a new agent in the area. You're specialising in leasing properties. Do you know anyone looking to move? And give them a flyer. Someone walking past, pushing a pram, introduce yourself to the mum, or the dad, whoever it is, or the grandmother pushing the pram, and be kind. How did people start real estate 60 years ago? Knocking on doors.
It's meeting the people.
Meeting the people. It's
Yep.
networking. You've got to get your face out. Your face and my face are the faces of our business.
That's turned into more of an electronic thing nowadays. To switch kind of offshoot, we use Show Mojo, which is called a third party. I guess it's an electronic introduction to a tenant, for lack of better terms.
Okay.
And Andrew Reese is doing something like that over there.
Inspect Real Estate.
Inspect Real Estate. So we have an equivalent over here. There's several of them. We use Show Mojo. There's like Rently, and there's a couple others out there that are pretty good. And what I tell the agents that use that in our company is this is just an electronic handshake. You have to go out there and still talk to that person, verify they're real, and then even when they do rent a home from you, you have to stay in touch with them.
Absolutely.
You have to contact them every quarter and then just beat down their door. So that's business development on that side.
Yep.
Now the business health check, back to that.
Yep.
Have you had any success stories where somebody could actually quantify you going in there and 6 months later they're doing so much more?
Oh, absolutely.
Love to hear some of those.
So the thing is, it's not just about me doing a health check on an office. So I do health checks on a real estate office before I do a full day's training with them, because I want to know where they're at. There's no use me coming into an office and starting to do rent roll growth strategies with them for a full day when they might already be doing something really well. So that's why I do a health check. So I need to see where they're at, what they're doing. So if I can just backtrack a little bit. If you said to me, Dennis, how am I going to grow my rent roll? I'm going to say, well, Brad, what are you doing? I'm going to start asking you questions. Well, how are you growing the rent roll now? And how many doors are you signing up? How many phone calls are coming in? I need to ascertain what you're actually doing before I can give you a response. So that's why I do a health check on an office. Then I'll go in and work on strategies after we've done the health check. So the health check, I don't necessarily sit there and go, okay, now let's do this, and this before I come in. We work on all of these things to fix that's in the health check. Then I come in and work on the strategies, a few days later, or it could be a month later, or it could be on the same day. I might go to an office for 2 days. And then I'll mentor them and put accountability into place on a weekly, fortnightly, or monthly basis until we get it. And we have had some examples. So there's a lady that I train, an office in Rockhampton, an office there. She just messaged me, would you believe, on the 15th, Sunday the 15th, I flew here to the United States, and I messaged her saying, hey, I'm going to put a photo of you up on my slides. And she messaged me saying, Dennis, just want to let you know, thank you. My numbers have tripled since you started training me. Tripled. So she was listing 3 to 4 to 5 managements a month. And she had listed, I could possibly look the message up, but it's going to be on my slides at the Florida conference next week. I think she's listed 16 doors so far, and it was the 15th.
That's excellent. Because part of that health check along the same lines is going to be establishing metrics.
Yeah, absolutely. Establishing a metrics. I need to work out where the blockage is, Brad. So sometimes you might be getting enough leads that are coming into the office, and these questions are working out. The sales might be generating all these leads, but they're not passing it on to the management team yet. So, we've got to start molding it. We've got to look at it. Phone calls could be coming into the office for, I'm thinking about renting and selling my home, and that lead's only going to sales. So my job is to say, well, no, it's got to go to one email to sales, one email to property management, and they can both call them or go on the appointment together.
And that's part of what you're looking at is their implementation level for a CRM.
Yeah.
Whatever that CRM is, there's 100 different ones out there. We all have opinions on it, but that's one of the things we've implemented is just simply using one this year.
Well, I was going to say,
before we weren't, and of course, that's another lesson learned is I kick myself for not doing that. Is forcing that implementation of using a CRM because we don't have any of the real good metrics yet. I don't know what my cost per conversion is. I don't know what my closing ratio is.
The closing ratio is very important. You look at
talk about that.
Yeah. So again, as part of the assessment, so it's a really good subject that you brought up. One of the questions I want to know is how many leads an office is generating. It's very rare that there's ever a figure in there. There's a company, Empire Industries, Stephen Rosenberg. He's the first person I'd been training for just on 3 years when I'd met Steve, and he's got to say, he's the first company I'd ever seen actually tracking their leads correctly. So he knew how many doors were coming in. So I look at how many leads are coming into the office, and then I look at how many doors they're getting to. So how many BDMs appointments are being made so they can pitch for the business, and then I look at how many are being converted, because then I can work out where do they need training. Is if their marketing's no good, maybe they're not getting enough leads coming in, or if the marketing from or the conversation that the BDM's saying when the phone call's coming in, they might not be very good, so they need more scripts and dialogues training so they can convert more appointments. And then if they're not converting enough appointments, then what are they saying? Are they not selling the services correctly, or are they overselling or underselling? So there's the three categories that you've got to look at. Very important to know where your leads are coming from, how many are coming in.
What gets measured gets managed.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that.
You could be getting 100 leads coming in, only converting 5. And a typical business owner will say, let's get more leads coming in. But you're losing 95% of your business. Why would you get 200 leads in? So that's, 190 people bad-mouthing you that you're no good and you're only listing 10.
So part of the idea to do this podcast show that we've been doing is you mentioned Empire Industries. And it's funny because weekly I have a chat with Pete Newbig with Empire, and he and I go over some things. We always have good discussions, and it's typically Thursday mornings that we just get on the phone and talk with each other. And I started to think, that what a great deal if we could put that on a recording to share with other single-family home or even multi-family home property management companies that would want to hear what we're talking about, because we have some golden nuggets in there that anybody would be smart to listen to.
Yep.
And I thought that was very pertinent for what we're talking about right now. And of course, I had another thought and I forgot about it, but I do want to talk to you a little bit further about what you can do with new business development managers, some of the consultations you can offer, because, for example, we've hired a new outside person and we've hired a new inside person, so there may be an opportunity there where I sit them down and say, okay, we need to have a discussion with you once a week, once a month, once a day. I don't really know, so I want you to talk about your services there to kind of show us, potentially even me, what you can offer me.
Yeah, okay, so if I was talking to a new BDM, first thing I'd want to know is how long have they been working in the particular business for? So in your case, your guys are both new. So the first thing...
To clarify that, they're brand new and with no experience in real estate prior to this, which I do like because I want to mold them as my own little Play-Doh.
Perfect.
We want to make sure they don't come in with any bad habits and licenses and weird stuff that might cause them to kind of look at things in a slanted view. Well, that's not how we did it at my last company. Well, you're not at your last company, you're here. So we've had that before with other hires, and we want to avoid all that. So we just hired from different industries.
Yeah, so no preconceived ideas of how property management works, and that puts a smile on me even more because the first thing that you need to do is, I would recommend, is you just get them in there, understand why you do property management the way you do. Because a BDM's job is a sales position. You've got your car yard, You've got your salesperson out the front who sells the vehicles, and then you've got your mechanic who looks after the vehicles. So they're two different mindsets. So the property manager is your mechanic. So if the mechanic's not doing a very good job, the salesperson isn't going to be selling any cars, and vice versa. They're not selling any cars. The property manager's got no work to do. So they do need to work together. I'm not saying a property manager can't list properties, because they can, but a BDM is a sales position. But for the salesperson to be good at selling the vehicle, in the case of a car yard, he's got to understand the vehicle. So in your BDM's position, I'd be saying, Brad, I'd be getting them to understand, why do you market the way you do? How do you chase your rent? Why do you do routines? How do you do ingoing reports? How do you do exit reports? How are you collecting money? How are you paying money? They need to understand all of the systems. They need to understand why you do it the way you do, why other real estate agents do it their way. Why did you change it to this way? They need to know the experiences, etc. So when they get into the door and they've got a question, they know how to overcome it. And it needs to come from their own heart, from, oh, wow, Brad told me the reason why they're doing this marketing now is because of A, B, and C.
Part of our initial training when we first brought these guys in is we went through every single paragraph of our management agreement, and I use a custom agreement that I created and, of course, lawyer approved. We went through every single paragraph, and every single paragraph had a story. And we did the exact same with our lease agreement, because I also use a custom lease, again, attorney approved. And after they got done with all that, they're like, man, you had a story for every single paragraph. I'm like, well, yeah, because it's coming from experience.
Yeah.
So we tweak the language here, or we omit this, or we add this here because of something that has happened in the past. But that gave them a complete understanding of the life cycle of management, from signing up an owner to leasing a home. And so with that behind us, I think we have a good benchmark, or at least a base to build them. So what I want to ask you there is, in your experience, have you seen realtors work out well or good or enough? I'm trying to understand. Understand my question here is, do realtors make good BDMs? Question mark.
So do realtors make good BDMs? So you're talking about your standard property manager? Sorry, we're talking about Australian terms.
We have real estate salespeople that go out and sell and buy real estate. Then we have property managers who are a different animal. But the licensed realtors, everybody in the United States is going to tell you this. They say, yeah, they sometimes can make a good BDM. It really kind of depends on the person. But what has your experience been, since you're seeing so much out there? Yeah,
so my experience is the best people to be the BDM is the salesperson. It's not the property manager.
With real estate experience or without?
Well,
because you came in without real estate experience and you killed it.
Yeah, I did. And I know I was a little bit of a freak about it, but when I look at the top 3 or 4 property managers and BDMs that I'm training, they've been in real estate for a while. So, I mean, Greg Watson comes to mind from New Zealand. It was his dad's business, so he understands every system and procedure in the office. He's also an implementer of the latest technology of whatever comes out. So, he gets in trouble for implementing too many new things. So, I mean, he's been in the industry a while. There's Elizabeth Hood in Rockhampton. I mean, she's just been in the industry 17, 18 years. She's just at under $200 from starting from zero, going into her own industry. So that's her own office. There's plenty of people that have been in it for a while, but then, there's people like myself that jumped in and have done really well at it. There's some people in WA I'm training the same. I've got a lady, she didn't work in sales, but she worked in securing jobs for people, recruitment. She was in the recruiting industry, and then she's gone into real estate, and then she's doing really well. So, when it's a combination of both, because a realtor has got experience in sales, in negotiating. I mean, real estate's all about negotiating. It's whether you're driven, if you're motivated by goals, if you're motivated by visions, etc., in achieving, and if you love that competitive spirit, you're driven by money as well. You're going to do really well in the BDM industry.
So kind of a neutral answer, because it depends on the person you're looking at. So that's really what I wanted to know, because I didn't know if there's if you had an experience to where 30% of the realtors work out and 70% of the non-realtors work out, something like that.
I can't give you an answer.
So it really
I'm looking at both. I'm thinking of another couple. Look, there's a lady down in South Australia near where Darren Hunter lives, and she'd only had 6 months experience in real estate, and she has now got 3 staff working for her.
Yeah, it's very person dependent.
Yeah, she's living in a town of 10,000 people.
Okay.
A town of 10,000 people. She's got now 32% of the market, and she is, she's won several awards in her local town. as well. And yeah, I mean, where she should be knocking over 100 doors this year. That's the target that I've got on her. She listed 88 last year, and I've only listed it at 12. My goal is, and by the time she listens to this podcast, she'll be over it. My goal is to get her to 130 doors.
And she's the principal.
She's the principal.
That's one of the things I want to bring up, is that's another challenge, because a business development person acting as the principal is really the same entrepreneur, and they're going to have a challenge to where they reach that critical mass to say, all right, how am I supposed to handle the operations side and the leasing side when I have to go out and do these business development appointments? So they may have to scale back, like turn down business. And you always hear people that say they turn down business.
Yep.
And, well, I don't know if I necessarily believe that full story, but...
Well, you're the business owner. You're not going to believe that story.
Yeah. I know some people say they turn down business, but it may not actually happen. Of course, we turn away the dog kennels, as you guys call them. The sub stuff that we don't want to do. But, yeah, for the most part, if it's a reasonable home that we can manage, and I've always said to my staff, I said, if it's a good owner, we can manage pretty much anything.
Yeah, look, if you've got a property that's possibly not in the most decent area, if it's just below average, but you've got an owner that's willing to do the paint, willing to do the gardens, they'll accept the tenant that you believe is best for the property, and they're happy for it to sit vacant a couple of extra weeks or days or whatever the market's doing, then it's okay. Because there are good tenants out there with a lower income. Let's not be too judgmental. And yes, I did list properties like that, but I had to then educate the girls, and I'd had to introduce them to the owners. When I say the girls, my property managers, they'd go, "Oh, what? Dennis listed one in that property?" Most of the time, I would turn down that business. My owner sometimes would be saying, "Dennis, just list them all. We'll throw it to sales." But then the property manager. So it was a little bit conflicting, but I was okay at negotiating an owner instead of renting it. Look, how about we get a salesperson just to give you an opinion? Just to give, I would negotiate them through that process as well.
The C Class Landlord. Right, a term that we've dubbed before. So tell me some of the hot buttons. This is personal advice. You're giving the audience when you're at a listing appointment, and what are some of the key indicators that you might be talking to a Class C landlord? So
Class C, we've got the touchy-feely landlord as well, Brad. So a touchy-feely landlord might be, my pet dog, or my grandmother's pet dog was buried in the backyard, or my great
overly emotional owner.
The touchy-feely. He planted that, so that's an alarm bell straight away.
Okay.
I don't want this room painted because it was my great grandfather's room, or you got to be really careful about them. And if someone straight out is whinging about, I'm not going to accept pets, etc. So in Australia, the stats are, I don't know what the stats are here in America. Two-thirds. Okay, 70% of tenants in Australia have got some form of a pet.
Yep.
Whether it's a snake, a spider, a dog, a cat, or a bird, or a bunny, or a guinea pig, whatever it is. Rat. We have rats as pets, can you believe? So, it's about 70%. So, it's just a matter of then educating the owner. So Mr. and Mrs. Smith, are you aware that 70% of the tenants throughout Australia have some form of a pet? Are you willing to turn down 70% of those pets? And then if we advertise your property as no pets, and, we don't know why inquiries aren't coming in, if it's price related or if it's just because of the pets. So how about we advertise the property considered? If nobody's applying for the property, then we know it's actually the price figure that it's overpriced and it's not the pet. So when tenants come through the property, we will advise, what type of a pet have you got? They might say a cat. Look, there's plenty of natural birds here, and the owner's already indicated they possibly won't allow a cat here.
So have you ever folded up your briefcase and said, "I'm sorry, I don't think we can help you here," and just turn around and walk out?
Yeah, look, I had on a couple of occasions.
Okay.
And there was also a couple of occasions where I'd still listed the property and then I had to terminate the agreement as well.
Okay.
So, one case I knew I was up against 5 or 6 other agencies, and I was just doing that hunting and collecting, and I didn't read the alarm bells. The last tenant that was in here, I had to get the hedges redone. I had to do this, no problem. We'll just organise garden care as a part of the lease agreement, etc. for the tenants, this, that and the other. And I need to make sure that they use a particular cleaning product for the showers. And I need that, I was just agreeing. I was taking my notes and, because I was interested in winning the business. I signed them up at full fee. I got professional photography. I even had videos done on the property. And then the owner kept on turning down all the tenants. because they couldn't find the perfect tenant. But we were putting all these tenants into other properties. And, our leasing agent virtually took my head off. Dennis, why did you sign this particular owner up? We can't it's unfortunate where we don't have a psychological analysis test that we can do on owners.
I know it. You just can't avoid them.
No, so I actually had to ring the landlord up and I asked them, how come they're turning the tenants down? And, first they accepted one, then they turned it down the next day. So, lucky the tenant hadn't paid the deposit. And I had to say, in Australia, we sign owners up for a 30-day period. So they've got to give us 30 days notice if they're not happy with our services.
Sure.
Well, that stands both ways. We can terminate them. And I actually was kind. And I said to Mrs. Smith, I'll just call her for the keep's sake. Mrs. Smith, are you aware of the 30-day agreement that you have to give us? I'm going to waive that on your behalf, and you can come and pick up the files when you're ready.
Just for fun, do you have any sort of guess what a C Class Landlord stat would be? Is it 1 out of 10, 1 out of 50?
No.
I couldn't either. I just thought for fun I'd bring it up.
Yeah, it'd be nice to be able to bring it up. I'm sure there's a lot of BDMs out there or property managers would say, 15%, they're just fee hunting or they're bad landlords, but they're the ones that they actually didn't win and they blame. I was there. I used to say, they just were fee hunters. Well, that's when I didn't know how to negotiate on my fees and sell my services. I'm sure, Brad, that you possibly had even done that yourself. You might not have been bothered in trying to win the business properly, and you just, you flicked it over the shoulder. There's no real stat.
There is one I want to circle back on, and that's the conversion rate.
Yeah, conversion rate.
You mentioned that, and you had a number for that, correct?
Yeah, so my personal conversion rate, I was 88%.
88%.
92 was the most I'd done in 1 year, 92% conversion rate. In my last year, it actually lowered because I picked up a couple of multiple owners, etc. But 88%. I think I finished on 89 point something percent was the average.
Let's define that real quick because I want to understand the stats from the top to the bottom there.
Yep.
So would you call that an opportunity?
Opportunity.
Okay, define the opportunity for us.
So an opportunity, even if that's over the phone, if you'd rang me up, Dennis, my property's vacant, there's painters in it at the moment, this, that and the other, I'd like to have a conversation. I live 300 miles away, I can't come, can we have an appointment? I'd organise whether I'd do it then if I was free, or I'd organise a Skype meeting or a telephone conversation. That's an opportunity.
Okay, so
right
good.
There. I'm pitching for the business,
30-minute presentation type stuff, 20, 30, 60-minute presentation.
Yeah, minimum 20 to 30 minutes, I'd be saying.
Via phone, and then, of course, you have your in-person ones. Those are no-brainers. Of course, that's an opportunity.
At the door, whether it's in the office, that's right. So that's a conversion opportunity, and I was documenting all. That was part of my key performance indicators. I had to document.
Yeah.
So that's why I was really good on my stats.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense, and I'm a big believer of that, too. I just want to be clear on the opportunity side because what's an opportunity sometimes? You can get really loosey-goosey with that and say, well, a person just walked in and that was an opportunity. Well, he could have just stumbled in there and wanted the flyer.
Yeah, look, an opportunity is not someone who walks in, says, what are your fees, and then they walk out, because they might be looking at building a property and they've got the return already on investment. They just want to know the fees and work out if they can afford to buy a house. That's not an opportunity. It's when you're actually sitting down pitching for the business, when you know there's a property for you to lease.
Excellent.
Yep.
Yeah, excellent job. So let's go ahead and wrap this up. And I wanted you to spend a little bit of time telling the audience how to reach you and kind of maybe paraphrase what you can do for them in the elevator pitch.
Yeah, so my elevator, well, firstly, you can contact me at www.bdmcoach.com.au, or you can contact Brad Larson as well.
Sure.
You can find me on Facebook. I give away a lot of rent roll growth tips, motivational tips, and videos through helping people in growing their rent roll or even their own personal development as well.
And talk about some of the products you have on your website.
Yeah, so I've got one of my most popular products that's just become popular in the last 6 to 12 months is the 2-day conference that I did, the Inspired Growth 2016 conference. I had 2 days of full content on rent roll growth and personal self-development. I had over 14 speakers come to that. One of them was Stephen Rosenberg from Houston, Texas. He came over and did 4 sessions, and that's now become the #1 seller for us in the last 12 months. I've also got a product called the Park to Top Gear. So I've done 3 sessions. There's 3 CDs there on rent roll growth strategies as well, and one of them is the scripts and dialogues. My favourite one is actually my DVD, where it was Andrew Reese, who you were talking about before from Inspect Real Estate. Andrew's been my coach for a long time. And Andrew Reese and myself actually sat down, and I had to pitch for the business to a real investor. So we had cameras. There was 3 cameras set up in a room. An investor walked into the door. I had my kit. He was there. He had a problem, and I had to pitch to him.
That's cool.
I had to actually pitch to him for the business. And then at the end of it, Andrew sat down and interviewed the investor. What did Dennis do right? What did he do wrong? What could have he done better? Asked him questions. And the owner would come back and say, wow, I was actually really surprised when Dennis said this. So it was really good to see from the investor's point of view. Then we turned the tables, and Andrew actually sat there and pitched for the business, and then I interviewed the owner. And then Andrew and I did a bit of a scripts and dialogues battle as well. So it's actually got 5 sessions in it. And
that sounds really good. I'm going to have to check that out, because that's the fly on the wall stuff on a listing presentation.
It literally is the fly on the wall. So we're not walking around a house, we're sitting at a coffee table.
That's about as good as shadowing you on a listing presentation. That's about as good as it gets.
Anyone in my training gets that DVD for free.
That's impressive.
That comes along with it. So it's good for them, because this particular owner came in and they said that they didn't have any problems. Oh, well, I don't have a problem. And I'd say, but your property's vacant. And it's with another agent. It's been vacant for 4 weeks. But they kept on saying they didn't have a problem. So I had to, show the owner that they had a problem. And my fees were 2% higher. And he didn't want to match my fees. So I had to show him that, well, you're not actually paying any fees because there's no rent coming in. So then he realised that there was a problem. So, but there was a few ways, and there was a battle. And then it took me 3-4 times before I'd actually, he admitted that he had a problem.
Amazing.
So yeah, that's my favourite one, is actually the DVD. A lot of the guys, great feedback on that one, because it's good to see the coach actually in the pitch, and I got to see my coach, and he grew over 1,000 doors in a short period of time himself. So it's a really good one to watch. Other products that I've got is I do have a couple of other podcasts and stuff that I've done that I just I only hand out to the people that I train as well. But they're the top ones there that I've just mentioned. I've got a couple coming out this year that'll be coming up as well.
So we'll see you next at the PM Grow Summit.
Yep, in Florida. So really looking forward to that. So I'm talking about 3 keys to winning the business on that one. So
okay.
3 keys to winning the business, which I touched on a little bit yesterday at the NARPM, the chapter yesterday, which is really exciting. And I'm also talking about how to grow or run your business development team.
Excellent. I look forward to seeing those.
Yep, thank you very much.
So Dennis, thanks for coming on. We really appreciate it, and we'll stay in touch.
Excellent. Thank you very much for having me.
Take care. Today's show is sponsored by the National Property Management Network, providing insurance products and services to property managers such as tenant liability insurance. Visit them at nationalpropertymanagement.com.
This has been a podcast episode by PropertyManagementProductions.com. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast, leave us feedback, and come back for our next episode.